Mono wiper. Well, hey y'all, welcome back to Doug's Cars. I'm driving a Mercedes today, and at first spec, it's just a nice W124. Oh, but wait, there's more. It is a 500e. That's right, this was built by Porsche. Mercedes actually said they couldn't fit this wide body Benz. As you can see, the fender flares here, especially up front, are so much wider than a regular W124. They couldn't fit it on their production line. And Porsche at the time was in dire straits. They were failing as a company. So Mercedes gave them some business and had them assemble this 500e on their production line. This is a 1993 model. It is a M119 5-liter V8 with about 326 PS, so over 300 horsepower. So this is completely different than the 300e that I learned to drive on, which had 177 horsepower, 3-liter straight six. Also sounds a lot different because, of course, it is a V8. But it is also a car from the 90s, so it's not loud like a modern car. Now, this car is currently up for auction, and I must say, this car is owned by a good friend of mine. I've known him for almost 20 years. We went to graduate school together back in the noughts. So I'm going to try to be as impartial as possible, but I know it's his car. So it's up for auction, and it's gray over black. It has some minor blemishes in the paintwork, but we'll gloss over that because well, this might need to be reglossed. But we'll gloss over that because that's not the point. This car underneath is absolutely great. It is a great car to drive. You may remember, if you're a long-time follower of this channel, that I drove a 600e. Actually, it was an E600 because they changed the nomenclature that year. About 2 years ago, right before COVID happened, and I'll link to that video up above here, so you can check that one out if you want. That one had also had some paintwork done to it and everything, but the interior wasn't as nice. This car's interior is fantastic. I mean, take a look at this. You've got, black leather buckets. These are Recaros, of course, and those would have happened, you would have had black bucket seats on a regular 124, maybe not in leather, most likely in MB Techs. But back here, you've also got buckets in the back seat. And you've got the awesome button that makes these fall down. You've got your first aid kit. Got a lovely armrest here, upholstered in really nice soft leather. And the interior is just flawless. All the Zebrano wood trim. You've got these cool little storage compartments here, and then like the leather on the doors is gathered, or ruched, I guess they call it. You've got the hydraulic door locks, power headrests. I mean, who had power headrests back then other than BMW and Mercedes? Nobody. Now the interior is basic W124. The US spec, of course, was a much higher spec than in most of Europe. Obviously, we all got air conditioning. You couldn't sell a car here without it. This one has 151,000 miles on it. Normal gauge is up there with the outside temperature readout here, and a bunch of lights. The cruise control stalk that they were so known for. You even had the parking lights. You could turn on the side lights if you're parked on a street in Europe. Wiper has the awesome mono wiper, and it does have heated seats. I'm not sure if they work or not, but it does have them. You have the damped, awesome ashtray there, and it actually has a provision for you to use chains on your rear tires, because of course this car was made in Germany and it snows there a lot. Oh, the door sound, just amazing. Bank vault quality on these 124s. And the body was taken off the production line and sent over to Porsche to be outfitted with the M119 V8, which of course was used in other Mercedes products. This is also from the era where they said, no, we cannot do glove box. So they said, we can't do a glove box with a passenger side airbag. We all know that to be a lie because all cars have those now. But at the time, no can do. Let's check out under the trunk lid here. Nice big trunk. Looks like this has some, maybe an engine computer, the original Becker tape deck with the 10 buttons and the volume up and down. I remember this when I was a kid. You could type in, because they were 1 through 0, you could type in the radio station you want to go to. How cool is that? Just a nice big trunk. You could easily put plenty of stuff back here. Got all the owner's manuals and all that fun stuff. I bet that's interesting to look at, but I'm pretty sure I know most of the specs of this car because I grew up with one. Granted, it was the 300e. You can see where in Europe they'd have the warning triangle here, molded into the carpeting. Nicely lined. I mean, a carpeted trunk lid in the early 90s, it was pretty rare. So of course we've got the parking brake here, but this is how you open the hood. Oh, look in the armrest, you've got the actual Mercedes cell phone. That's fantastic. It's even got the logo on it, and of course it's completely useless nowadays. Oh well. The key and ignition sound. Let's hop in here so we can get rid of that. Okay, yeah, so this button here releases the rear headrest. They'll drop back down. You have to fold them back up yourself though. Climate control here. It's actually in Fahrenheit. My dad's 1989 was in Celsius, and we had no idea what any of those things meant, of course. Got your power mirror controls here, and oddly enough, your this dial controls the front and rear separation on the stereo speakers. So if you want to have it all in the back, you roll it that way. If you want to have it in the front, I don't know why they didn't. Obviously, this has an aftermarket radio, so you know we're good to go with that. This turns on the rear dome light for whatever reason. It does have reading lights back here, so the rear seat passengers can control it. And then here appears controls for the telephone and the sunroof, and this little light here. I guess I have to turn it on. There we go. See, it blinks to remind you to put your seatbelt on. Very interesting. I remember that from when I was a child as well. But yeah, this little add-on thing here for the cell phone, that's kind of cool. So let me go ahead and it's getting warm. So I'm gonna put my seatbelt on. We're gonna go for a drive so you can't cool off a little bit. Let's check out how this 5-liter V8 thunders down the road. All right. I will say that the one flaw in this interior, other than that one button there, is this trim here on the B pillar, which is mentioned in the auction site, but nice. You know, it's a V8, so it's always going to sound great, but in the early 90s, nobody had loud exhaust like they have now. Like, when I had my M4, I had the first generation M4, that thing was loud. It was really loud. This is not. Now, you could control that, of course. It didn't have to be loud, but it was always going to be louder than a car from the 90s. They just were not noisy. That sounds good. I like that. That sounds really good. And there's just something about the 3-pointed star sitting there on the hood. I mean, I learned to drive on a very similar car, as I've mentioned 9 times already in this video, and having that gun sight on the hood is just it's just really cool. It really is. But this is like, look at 300 horsepower nowadays. You can get that in a Camry, right? But in 1992, 300 horsepower was Ferrari levels. I mean, this was an M5 fighter. Now, the M5 you can only get with a manual. So because this is a Mercedes and it's luxurious, and obviously you can tell from the interior it's very luxurious, you got an automatic. And the automatic, of course, was silky smooth. It's slow. It's a 4-speed automatic. They all were back then. Oops. And you know, it shifts, and you know, it's just a fun car to drive. I've driven so many V8 Mercedeses in this neighborhood. I should know how good they're going to be. Now, the other flaw is the AC is not blowing cold in this car, which is also detailed in the auction. So I'm going to put my window down a little bit. That's too breezy. I don't want the microphone to suffer. I will suffer and sweat instead, so y'all can hear me ramble on about this awesome car. These were sleepers, really. Other than those wide fender flares and the 500E badging on the back, you would never know. This, you know, in the US, these were pretty high-end cars, so most of them were the 3-liter straight 6. You could get the 2.6 as well, and there was a diesel for a minute. Now in Europe, you could get, like, I don't know, like a 1.8-liter gas motor or something like that. I mean, they had tiny little engines, and most of them were taxis. But here, this just looked like your regular suburban Mercedes, except under the hood was something very special. And that engine was used in S-classes, it was used in the SL Roadsters, it was used in so many other cars. It wasn't bespoke to this model, I have to point that out, but it hadn't been done like this. I mean, prior to this, the mid-size fast sedans were like the Ford Taurus SHO, which was only a manual for many years as well. Of course, that was front-wheel drive, and it was based on a Taurus. And while it was fully loaded with every possible option you could think of, it just didn't have the structural rigidity. I mean, the bank vault doors in this thing. This car's 30 years old, and the doors sound like you're shutting a vault in the, you know, Chase Manhattan branch in New York City. I mean, like, it's such a no expense spared car at the time. Back when Mercedes still did that, no expense spared. Now, it's funny that I broke traction back there, because I did that in the E600 I drove as well, in a parking garage. It's easy to do. You know, these cars are not lightweight by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not as heavy as modern cars because they just don't have all of the junk that modern cars have. It's got traction control, it's got dual airbags, but it doesn't have side bags, it doesn't have head airbags, it doesn't have a lot of the modern electronics, which is a good and bad thing. It makes it a little more difficult to work on these, but you know, it's still a safe car. You could easily survive a bad wreck in one of these. Many people did. I don't want to. I don't really want to be in a car wreck ever, but this is a safe, fast, quiet, comfortable cruiser. I would have to grease this armrest myself because it's squeaking, but that's negligible. I mean, that's 2 seconds worth of work. And these usually, yeah, these pop up out of the way, so you don't even have to use it if you don't want to. But it is a really nice car, and I'm kind of sad that Tim's getting rid of this. I know he had it for a long time, and he just didn't drive it much. He has several other classic era Mercedes, and you know, it was time to let this one go, and that's fine. I for a split second toyed with it, but this is just way out of my price range at the moment for something like this. I've always liked these, and I've always wanted one, and they're definitely on the up. They are raising in value. I know there was one that sold on Bring a Trailer with about 20,000 or more miles. It was red with a tan interior for like 26 grand plus their fees and everything. So I fully expect this to bring around $20,000 myself. It's got a little less miles, but some of the cosmetic issues could hold it back a bit. But again, that's all documented, it's all up front. It's a 2-owner car. I believe the story was this had been owned by someone who I believe passed away, and was offered for sale by the mechanic who'd worked on the car. And it was the same mechanic that he used, and he jumped on it. And so I drove this a few years back before COVID, and just immediately loved it. And you know, it's just a sumptuous place to be. You've got this beautiful Zebrano wood trim, the black leather. The one that my dad had the MB Tex, and if that car isn't still on the road, which it very well could be, those seats are somewhere, because that MB Tex is never going away. It doesn't crack, it doesn't really fade that much. But this leather is obviously just beautiful shape, absolutely stunning interior quality in these cars. That, again, this is when Mercedes made cars without the bean counters being involved, and they just really made them to last. And so if this wasn't damaged by an accident at some point in its life when it would have been totaled out, there's still a bunch of these around. Now this one has a little bit of rust on the front fenders, which is actually quite unusual. I know I have a lot of followers in the UK, and these things all rusted out there, but in the US they didn't. And so I don't know, I think this car initially came from Pennsylvania, so maybe that's why. But you know, that's cosmetics. Obviously, you're riding along with me right now. This car shifts nicely, it drives well, it sounds good, it brakes well, and I mean, yeah, you could easily drive this car across country right now. I mean, I've got, and, oh, that turn signal click. It's so good. It's just so good. Got one last chance to give her the beans here a little bit and hear that awesome 5-liter M119 V8. Oh yeah. I mean, and that's 60 like that. And that was not floored, by the way. I'm not gonna do that. She's an old girl, and you know, that's for the next owner to do. But you got it's a 5-liter V8. You gotta at least try, right? So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed checking out this 500e that is currently for auction. And when the auction ends, I'll go ahead and post what it's sold for underneath in the description below, and then you can see. My guess is 20. So we'll see. It's up for auction for a few more days, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you've not subscribed to Doug's Cars and you want to see some other fun stuff, please hit subscribe below, because y'all watching my videos makes this completely possible. And thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the W124 500e. Have a great day.